The crystal glasses clinked against bone china as my mother set the table for our mandatory Sunday dinner. Everything had to be perfect, as always. The Williams family image needed to be maintained, even if it was just for show. I'm Emily Williams, though my family barely acknowledges the Williams part anymore. At 32, I'm the disappointment who chose to work in tech instead of joining the family's luxury car dealership empire. The black sheep who wore jeans to country club meetings and suggested modernizing our accounting systems when I was just 19. Emily, my mother called from the dining room, her voice carrying that familiar note of disapproval. Your father wants everyone here by 6 sharp. And please, wear something appropriate this time. I glanced down at my casual blazer and silk blouse. The outfit probably cost more than her entire dining set, but she'd never know that. I'd learned long ago to keep my success quiet, to let them think I was struggling in my little computer job, as they called it. If they only knew. The truth was, I'd been 3 steps ahead of them for years. While they bragged about their 5 dealerships across the state, I was building something much bigger. But tonight, everything would change. They'd forced my hand, and now, it was time to show them exactly who they'd been looking down on all these years. I arrived at 5:55 p.m., parking my modest Volvo behind my brother, Marcus's shiny new Porsche. He'd always been the golden child, following in our father's footsteps, playing the part of the dutiful son. He was also running their business into the ground with his gambling habit and risky investments, but heaven forbid anyone mentioned that at Sunday dinner. The house was exactly as it had been since my childhood, a sprawling colonial mansion that screamed old money, even though our family's wealth only went back 2 generations. My grandfather had built the dealership from nothing, but my father, Richard Williams, preferred to pretend we had blue blood going back centuries. You're almost late, my mother said by way of greeting, eyeing my clothes with barely concealed disdain. Almost isn't late, Mom, I replied, hanging my coat in the foyer. How's the new country club membership going? She stiffened slightly. They didn't know I knew about their rejection from the Preston Valley Club. The 3rd such rejection this year. Their social standing wasn't what it used to be, though they were desperately trying to hide it. In the dining room, Marcus was already seated, his wife Jessica beside him, both of them looking like they'd stepped out of a luxury car commercial. My father stood at the head of the table, swirling his whiskey like he was starring in his own movie about wealthy patriarchs. Emily, he nodded curtly. Glad you could tear yourself away from your computers. I smiled, taking my seat. If he only knew that those computers had helped me build a tech empire worth billions, or that I owned controlling shares in 3 major software companies. But tonight wasn't about my success. It was about their failure and the choice they were about to make. Now that everyone's here, my father began, setting down his glass with practiced authority. We need to discuss some family business. Here it comes, I thought, maintaining my calm expression. The dealerships are entering an exciting new phase of expansion, he continued, though I could see the strain around his eyes. We're planning to acquire 3 new locations by year's end. I knew this was a lie. Their latest financial reports, which they didn't know I had access to, showed they were barely staying afloat. Marcus's gambling debts and failed side ventures had boiled them dry, and their attempts to compete with modern car-buying apps were failing miserably. That's wonderful, dear, my mother beamed, passing the roasted potatoes. Emily, you really should reconsider joining the family business. It's not too late to give up this coding phase. I took a small serving of potatoes, noting how Jessica's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine glass. She knew about Marcus's debts, had probably been the one writing checks to cover them. Actually, my father cleared his throat. That's part of what we need to discuss. Emily, your grandfather's trust fund, the one you've been using as collateral for business loans. I interrupted quietly. The room went silent. My father's face reddened slightly. How did you? He started, but caught himself. That's privileged information. Is it? I took a sip of water. Like the 3 rejected loan applications this month, or the foreclosure notice on the downtown dealership? Marcus's fork clattered against his plate. Dad, what is she talking about? Nothing, my father snapped. Emily's obviously been poking around where she doesn't belong. But that ends now. He straightened in his chair, attempting to reclaim his authority. We're cutting you off, Emily. No more trust fund, no more family support. Clearly you don't understand loyalty or family values. My mother gasped appropriately, right on cue. Jessica stared at her plate. Marcus tried to smirk but couldn't quite manage it. I set down my water glass carefully. Before you continue, Dad, maybe you should take a look at this. I pulled out my phone, opening a particular folder I'd prepared for this moment. What's that supposed to be? He scoffed. The truth, I said simply, turning the screen toward him, about who really owns Williams Automotive Group. All of it. As my father's eyes scanned the document, his face went from red to white faster than I thought possible. Because there, in clear corporate documentation, was proof that his daughter, the one he was about to cut off, had secretly become his company's majority shareholder 6 months ago. And that was just the beginning of what I had to show them. The silence that followed felt like a vacuum, sucking all the air from my mother's perfectly decorated dining room. My father's hands trembled as he held my phone, his eyes locked on the screen that showed exactly who owned his precious empire. This is impossible, he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Is it? I took my phone back, swiping to the next document. Like it was impossible that Marcus lost $2.4 million at the Bellagio last month. Or impossible that Mom's been forging your signature on loan applications. My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers, splashing red across her pristine white tablecloth. Marcus looked like he might vomit. How did you? Jessica started, but I cut her off. How did I know? Or how did I acquire controlling interest in a company that's been hemorrhaging money for years? I pulled out my laptop, opening it to a presentation I'd prepared. Let me show you exactly how the daughter you dismissed built an empire right under your noses. The screen displayed a simple timeline, starting 8 years ago. Remember when I suggested modernizing our systems, Dad? When I said cryptocurrency and tech investments were the future? You laughed. Called it internet funny money. Well, I clicked to the next slide, showing my first company's valuation. $500 million. That's just the beginning. I continued, watching their faces drain of color. While you were busy buying country club memberships and covering up Marcus's gambling, I was building something real. My father found his voice. You're lying. These numbers are all verified, I interrupted, by the same accountants who've been trying to warn you about the dealership's imminent collapse. Would you like to see their latest report? I clicked again, displaying the devastating financial analysis of Williams Automotive Group. Red numbers filled the screen. Debts, losses, failed investments. Did you really think nobody would notice the shell companies Marcus set up to hide his casino losses? I asked, turning to my brother. Or the way Mom's been moving money between accounts to cover the bounced checks. Marcus slumped in his chair, his perfect posture finally breaking. Jessica reached for her purse, probably checking for her car keys, planning her escape. But here's what really interested me, I continued, clicking to another document. The loan applications. 3 different banks, all using grandfather's trust fund as collateral. The same trust fund you just tried to take from me. My mother's hands fluttered to her throat, a nervous tell I remembered from childhood. Emily, darling, we can explain. No need. I cut in. The SEC will handle the explanations. They're very interested in some of these transactions. The word SEC hit like a thunderbolt. My father's face went from white to gray. You wouldn't, he whispered. We're family. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Family? Was it family when you told potential investors I was mentally unstable because I warned them about Marcus's schemes? Or when you tried to have me removed from grandfather's trust because I refused to invest in your failing expansion plans? I stood, walking to the window that overlooked their perfectly manicured lawn. 6 months ago, I could have reported everything: the fraud, the embezzlement, the forged documents. But instead, I did something better. I started buying shares through various shell companies. Small amounts at first, then larger ones as your desperation grew. Every time Marcus needed to cover a gambling debt, every time Mom's credit cards got maxed out, I was there, buying up pieces of the company at bargain prices. Why? Marcus finally spoke, his voice cracking. Why not just turn us in? I turned back to face them. Because grandfather built this company from nothing. He believed in honest work, in building something real. And watching you destroy it piece by piece, I couldn't let that happen. I clicked to the final slide. It showed my complete portfolio, not just the dealerships, but my tech companies, real estate holdings, and investment funds. The total number at the bottom made my mother actually gasp. That's, my father squinted at the screen. That's over $3 billion. 3.7, I corrected quietly. And that's just the liquid assets. Jessica stood abruptly. I need some air. Sit down, I said firmly. Everyone needs to hear this next part. She sank back into her chair, looking like she might faint. Tomorrow morning, the board of directors will receive a complete audit of the company's finances. Every transaction, every hidden account, every forged signature. They'll also receive my proposal for restructuring. Restructuring? My father's voice had lost all its usual authority. Yes, you have 2 choices. I closed my laptop carefully. Option 1, you all resign immediately. Sign the paperwork I've prepared, admit to your roles in the financial misconduct, and accept the consequences. In return, I'll ensure the company survives and your reputations aren't completely destroyed. The room was so quiet, you could hear the antique grandfather clock ticking in the hall. And option 2? Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. I smiled, the same cold smile my father had given me countless times over the years. Option 2 is I step back and let the SEC handle everything. They're particularly interested in those offshore accounts you set up last month, Marcus. The ones in Jessica's maiden name. Jessica's head snapped up, her eyes wide with betrayal as she stared at her husband. Apparently, she hadn't known about those accounts. You have until midnight to decide, I continued, gathering my things. Though given the federal agents currently parked outside the downtown dealership, I'd suggest deciding quickly. My father stood suddenly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. You planned all this? Tonight? The dinner? Everything? No, Dad. You planned this. Every time you dismissed me, every time you covered up Marcus's mistakes, every time you chose appearance over reality, you planned this. I just took notes and waited. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Mom? The Preston Valley Country Club didn't reject your application. I bought it last year and had them blacklist you. Consider it payback for all those holiday dinners you forgot to invite me to. The sound of my mother bursting into tears followed me out into the hallway. But I wasn't finished. There was one more revelation to come. One that would shake this family to its very foundation. I turned back one last time. Before you make your decision, you might want to ask Marcus about the real reason Grandfather changed his will 2 days before he died. About the conversation they had in the hospital and the security camera footage I have from that night. Marcus's face went completely blank. He knew exactly what I was talking about. And soon, so would everyone else. The next morning dawned clear and cold, the kind of autumn day my grandfather used to love. I sat in his old office at the downtown dealership, now my office, watching the sun rise over the city he'd helped build. The leather chair still smelled faintly of his cigars, a scent that had always meant safety and wisdom to me. My phone had been buzzing since 5 a.m. First Jessica, then my mother, then a stream of family friends and business associates. I let them all go to voicemail. They had years to listen. Now they could wait. At exactly 9:00 a.m., my assistant knocked on the door. They're here. I nodded, straightening the files on my grandfather's mahogany desk. Send them in. My family filed in like mourners at a funeral. My father had aged overnight, his usual swagger replaced by a haunted stoop. My mother's makeup couldn't hide her sleepless night. Marcus looked hungover, and Jessica kept her distance from him, her wedding ring conspicuously absent. Sit, I said quietly, gesturing to the chairs arranged before the desk. They sat without argument, a first in family history. Before we discuss your decisions, I began, let's address what happened in this room 8 months ago. I pressed a button on my laptop, and the large screen on the wall flickered to life. Security camera footage appeared, showing this very office. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., the night before my grandfather died. Marcus entered, looking furtive. Our grandfather sat in the same chair I now occupied. Turn it off, Marcus pleaded. No, I said firmly. Everyone needs to see this. On screen, Marcus paced, agitated. The audio was crystal clear. You can't change the will, Grandpa. You can't give everything to Emily. Our grandfather's voice, though weak, carried his characteristic steel. Emily understands business, Marcus. Real business, not just appearances. She'll preserve my legacy. She abandoned the family, Marcus shouted. She plays with computers while I've given everything to this company. Given? Grandfather laughed weakly. You've taken, boy. Stolen. Gambled. I know about Geneva. My mother gasped. Geneva, where Marcus had lost $5 million of company money in a single weekend. Emily figured it out. Grandfather continued on screen. Brought me the proof weeks ago. But unlike you, she wanted to protect the family name. Give you a chance to make it right. The next part was harder to watch. Marcus, desperate and angry, grabbing our grandfather's heart medication, holding it out of reach. Sign it back to me, he demanded. Right now. Instead, Grandfather pressed the silent alarm under his desk. As security rushed in, he looked directly at the camera, directly at me, watching now, and mouthed, "Trust Emily." He died the next morning. The official cause was heart failure. I stopped the footage. The room was deathly silent. The police have a copy of this, I said into the quiet, along with the toxicology report showing elevated levels of stress hormones from that confrontation. You killed him, my mother whispered, staring at Marcus. Your greed killed your own grandfather. Marcus buried his face in his hands. Jessica had moved even further away from him, her face a mask of disgust. Now, I continued, opening the first file on the desk, let's discuss your decisions about my offer. My father cleared his throat. We'll sign whatever you want. Good, because what I want is to set things right. I started distributing documents. Here's how this will work. Over the next hour, I laid out the new reality. My father would take early retirement, citing health reasons. Marcus would enter a private rehabilitation program for his gambling addiction, non-negotiable and closely monitored. My mother would step down from all charity boards, social clubs, and public positions. The company will survive, I explained, watching them sign page after page. I've already lined up partnerships with 3 major tech firms to modernize our sales platform. The Williams name will continue to mean something in this city, just not what you thought it meant. And us? My mother asked quietly. What happens to us? I leaned back in grandfather's chair. You'll receive living allowances. Modest ones, enough to maintain decent lives, but not your current excesses. Marcus's debts will be paid off to prevent legal consequences, but he'll work a regular job, earning regular wages, once he completes rehabilitation. A regular job. Marcus looked horrified. Yes, Marcus, like regular people, like I did when I started my tech company, working 80-hour weeks while you were flying private jets to Monaco. I turned to Jessica. You have a choice too. The prenup Marcus had you sign is void. I've made sure of that. You can leave now with a generous settlement, or stay and accept the new circumstances. She stood without hesitation, placing her keys to their mansion on the desk. I'll have my lawyer contact yours. With that, she walked out, head high, never looking back at Marcus. My father spoke up, his voice rough. Why not just destroy us completely? Why show any mercy? I opened my desk drawer and pulled out an old photograph. In it, a much younger version of my father stood beside my grandfather in front of the first Williams dealership. Both were smiling, proud, genuine. Because of him, I said, placing the photo on the desk. Because grandfather believed in redemption. He gave you a chance when you were young, Dad. Now I'm doing the same. I stood, signaling the end of the meeting. The papers will be filed today. The press release about the reorganization goes out at noon. Your resignations will be described as a planned succession, allowing you all to save face. Don't make me regret this, Mercy. They filed out slowly, shoulders bowed, faces drawn. My mother paused at the door. You're exactly like him, you know, she said softly. Your grandfather. We should have seen it sooner. Yes, I replied. You should have. After they left, I walked to the window, looking out at the dealership lot where I used to play as a child. The morning sun glinted off rows of new cars, each one representing the legacy my grandfather had built and I had saved. My phone buzzed, a news alert. The technology sector was praising the Williams Automotive Group's innovative new digital sales platform. Our stock was up 12% in pre-market trading. The future was already arriving. I sat back down in my grandfather's chair, opening his old ledger. Inside, he'd written something on the last page just days before his death. Dear Emily, Power isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself when others give you reason not to. You understand that? It's why you'll succeed where they failed. Love, Grandpa. I closed the ledger, smiling slightly. The empire wasn't just saved, it was transformed. And the daughter they dismissed had become the architect of its future. 3 months later, I stood in the main showroom, watching as our new digital display systems were installed. The Williams Automotive Group had become the talk of the industry, pioneering a hybrid model of online and traditional car sales that was revolutionizing the market. My father had settled into quiet retirement, taking up golf and staying away from business entirely. My mother had found a surprising peace and a simpler life, even starting to volunteer at a local food bank. Marcus was 6 weeks into his rehabilitation program, finally facing his demons. As for me, I kept grandfather's chair, his ledger, and his belief in building something real. The billions I'd earned in tech were now building something even bigger, a legacy that would honor his name and prove that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's construction. Standing there in the gleaming showroom, I took out my phone and deleted all the angry voicemails I'd saved from years of family dinners. I didn't need them anymore. Success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. And I had done exactly that.